Giddy up. What a 24-hour news cycle in the NHL. The offseason is buzzing. Welcome into another edition of Daily Faceoff Live. We're streaming on the DFO YouTube as always. And as always, we're a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Huts, were you glued to your phone yesterday or what?
What a crazy day, Ty. You know what I mean? You see the things that have gone on in the NHL. The standard has been set. And I want to go back to you seeing this happening, talking about rewiring the way we think of hockey and free agency this time of year. And it's playing out in front of us firsthand. Like the first round picks are just going around like no problem, like nobody's business. It's going to be an interesting few days here. The draft, free agency, and everything. And as the landscape changes across the NHL, Ty.
Yeah, we have multiple picks in the top 10 in the first round of the NHL changing hands over the last 24 hours, which means it is a great time to have our friend Steven Ellis on the show. He's going to join us in about 15 minutes time, but not one, not two, not three, but four very significant trades in the last 24 hours in the NHL. So let's dive right in, and we will start at the top, or should I say near the top of the NHL draft. The Chicago Blackhawks sending the 4th overall pick to the Buffalo Sabres in a deal for Bowen Byram. The full deal on your screen right now. Bowen Byram and Jordan Greenway in exchange for Louis Crevier, a first-round pick, that's 4th overall, and a second-round pick this year. Huts, this one was mind-blowing from a whole bunch of different perspectives, but to what you were alluding to earlier, teams know they are not getting quality on the free agent market. They have to do it on the trade market. It is driving prices through the roof, and there is no better example than this. I was jaw on the floor stunned when I saw what Chicago gave up for Byram.
I will give a quick shout out here to John Chaik and the Toronto Maple Leafs. They look like geniuses right now, dealing a 5th to give Darren Radish and get him signed on the books, because what these D-men are going for, what these players are moving for is wild, right? So you think of it from the Buffalo side, it's like, so Bowen Byram, you have a good decor, you move him out. Jordan Greenway's kind of a salary dump. He makes $4 million playing on your 4th line during the playoffs, and Bo Byram wants to be that number 1 guy. But from the Chicago Blackhawks standpoint, like dealing the 4th pick is a wild take here. I think for Buffalo, they are loaded up here. It will be interesting to see what they do with that pick. I know we're going to talk to Steven Ellis in a little bit, so I don't want to kill our guest here, but this is just an interesting hockey move here. And I think it just goes to show you what players are going for and people understanding and teams understanding right now that it's going to be very hard to make your team better during free agency. So you're going to have to seek out trades. You're going to have to go find suiting partners. And again, now when you look across the league on guys we know that are potentially being moved, you think of the Dylan Larkins, and now Stevie Y's thinking about, how many trading partners are there in value. And this is a crazy move from the Hawks. A bit of a head scratcher if you're in Chicago and you're Connor Bedard, where they don't have anybody really riding shotgun with him yet either, Ty.
Well, and that's where I wanted to go next, Huts. Like, if you're Connor Bedard and you're sitting here, one, Chicago has like a ton of young defensemen. So, like, on one hand, I do understand, like, you go get a guy like Byram who's a little bit further along in his career, right? 25 years old. He's played a number of seasons now for a few different teams. He wants to be a number 1 D-man somewhere. He wants to run a top unit power play, all that stuff. Like, I can understand the fit for Byram in Chicago, but you look back at that draft a few years ago when they didn't take Ivan Demidov and they took Artem Levshunov because they wanted to get another big name D-man, and everyone was sitting there going like, wait, but that's Connor Bedard's line mate for the next 10 years in Demidov. Like, why don't you go grab that guy? No, you give up the second, or you use the 2nd overall pick on a D-man, and now you sit here and to give up an asset as premium as that 4th overall pick, and now to come out of this draft and not potentially have a strong young line mate that Connor Bedard can kind of grow with for the next decade, I think that's a really big mistake. Like, there were Hawks fans who went into this offseason being like, oh, could we get our hands on Brady Tkachuk if he shakes loose? I just think Byram, again, he's a totally fine player, but for what I think Hawks fans wanted and for what I think the Hawks need this offseason, this is just underwhelming.
Yeah, very underwhelming too. And again, it's just concerning, when you look at this team. And again, not that Bo Byram isn't experienced, right? Like, I guess now when you think 25, he's won a Stanley Cup, he's been around. But I think the big factor when I think about the Hawks D, and there hasn't really been like that leadership role in the experience factor. I think that's something that's played into the struggles. You have some big picks back there. You have some guys, but like, what's going to steady this decor and help them grow with experience-wise? And it is the one position, too. I know we see outliers that step in and younger guys have success. Obviously, we saw Matthew Schaefer step right into the league, but as a younger D-man in the league, you need experience to learn how to play. It's very similar to goaltending where it takes a lot of time and mentorship, and they just don't really have that on the back end. So I just don't know how this solves the problem moving forward and makes them a better team in the Central Division where it is a star-studded cast and you need to be able to play on both sides of the puck. So time will tell, but for Yaremchuk and the Buffalo Sabres, moves are being made. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here.
2 picks in the first round, again, including 4th overall. And Buffalo's a team in win now mode. The other thing this did, and it's a small part of the deal, but I think it's more significant than people realize, Huts, they got out of the Jordan Greenway money as well. So Buffalo now sits here. They get 2 really quality assets. Louis Crevier, I'm a fan. He's a 6'8" defenseman. And now they sit with almost $22 million in cap space for this offseason. I mean, maybe the door's not closed on Alex Tuck. They got to go long-term with Zach Benson. Like, they have $22 million and pretty much a full roster. Like, they kind of have some money here now if they want to go make a splash somewhere else, including maybe people are speculating, do you dangle this 4th overall pick for Connor Hellebuyck?
Yeah, it's an interesting take too, right? Because like when you think about Winnipeg, and I guess if you're Connor Hellebuyck now, as you see superstars moving out of teams and going into winning, better suiting, I guess, areas where teams that are ready to win for Connor Hellebuyck, he obviously doesn't have that playoff pedigree, but I think that Olympic gold medal pushes him over the top. And then from the outside looking in, you look at Nikolai Ehlers leave your team, and next thing you know, you go from the President's Trophy winner to missing the playoffs. To now you're like, well, how are we ever going to get any better? It's really hard to draw players in. They probably had their window of being the best possible team they could have been, with Kyle Connor, Scheifele being there. And then Josh Morrissey, and then having Ehlers, he's gone. Now, where does it go from here? I just don't really see that upside for him. And maybe if you're the Winnipeg Jets and Cheveldayoff, and the fact that you could just move him out and get maybe a big haul back, and that 4th overall pick might be a factor, and UPL still has some upside. So it's something that I think they're going to kick the tires on. And it's all going to depend on what Connor Hellebuyck. We can talk about as much as we want, but the decision's going to come down to him, as we see the players have a ton of power lately.
All right, second up on our list of big trades, the Washington Capitals made a move for Jordan Kyrou, and it was, again, just an absolute monster of a return in this one. It's Jordan Kyrou from the Blues to the Caps in exchange for Connor McMichael, Milton Gastrin, who was their second-round pick in last year's draft. He was the 36th overall pick a year ago and the number 16 overall pick in the upcoming draft. Again, Jordan Kyrou is a very good young player. I think it's crazy that when you hold up him and Connor McMichael and their numbers from last year side by side, they're almost identical, which is crazy. Kyrou's coming off a down year, and I get, again, the market crazy strong for him. I think Washington is absolutely getting the best player in this trade. And there are people who say, hey, if you get the best player in the trade, you won the trade. So from that perspective, like, I get it. But on the other hand, I'm just stunned that the cost for Jordan Kyrou was 3 pretty premium assets, Huts.
Yeah, I think the saying only really works too if it's like a big gap in player, right? Where you talk about the Brady Tkachuk trade and you're like, well, you're just betting on futures. Florida won the trade. But in this one, like, Connor McMichael's not that bad of a player. And I think with Pierre-Luc Dubois out last year, that changed a little bit of the point production. Then I think about the factor of like playing with Alex Ovechkin, throughout this run of trying to facilitate that. It puts a lot of pressure on a younger guy who's come up through that organization. I think this is a great change of scenery for both players. And I think for the Blues, the risk you inherit with Connor McMichael, with maybe Jordan Kyrou, who's kind of ran his course. He's been under 3 coaches in St. Louis. It hasn't really hit under any. Then you have Jim Montgomery, who could probably help Connor McMichael. And then the factor of you have that 1st overall pick in Milton Gastrin, who can be there as well. So pick 16 is nothing to shake a stick at. Like, this is an interesting draw here. Like, if you're St. Louis in the star-studded Central, and you can slowly acquire picks and players and grow into this in the next 3-4 years, you might be in really good shape as Colorado and Minnesota and whom am I drawing a blank here right now?
Colorado.
The teams that are like all trying to load up to win right now. If you're St. Louis kind of waiting in the weeds and you're slowly moving Jimmy Snuggerud up your lineup, Jake Neighbors is growing up your lineup, Robert Thomas has been a great player. Now all of a sudden, if the Binnington factor gets moved out, you have Joel Hofer, like, you're in a really good situation here 2 or 3, 4 years down the road if you're strategic enough. And I think that's going to be a good standpoint. I think for Doug Armstrong, he said he's going to do the draft Friday night. And then I think there's going to be next week an official announcement as Alex Steen takes over. I think St. Louis is leaving Alex Steen in a really, really good spot here with the way this roster's built.
Yeah, and like I think the Blues won this trade, and I don't want to like Jordan Kyrou has, and that's maybe the difference here is like Connor McMichael had a good season last year, or a fine season, I should say. Jordan Kyrou has 35 plus goal potential, and when you look at how the Capitals are going to move forward in a post Ovechkin era, whether it's next year or the year after, like you need to replace those goals somewhere. So like I really do understand, and I really love the fit of Kyrou in Washington. There's just a part of me that, again, like the sticker shock on this trade is insane. Like if you would have told me it was just McMichael and the prospect, I would have been like, yeah, like that makes sense. Like a second round last year in Gastrin and a good young player in McMichael. Like the fact that the 16th overall pick's involved is just like it's an overpay, and it's an overpay to such a big degree that I'm stunned. And again, both these deals, I think, kind of had clear winners and losers, which brings us to another trade we saw yesterday. It was one of the first ones of the day, but the Ottawa Senators gave up pick number 9 for William Eklund from the San Jose Sharks. Again, I really like the player. He is a strong two-way piece. He's young. He's only 23 years old. Ottawa's trying to replace a big hole in their lineup left by Brady Tkachuk. But I'm sitting here and looking at a guy who, through 3 seasons in the NHL, has never scored 20 goals and has never really been close to being a point-per-game player. And I know he was on a San Jose team that wasn't that good. Like, I get why the Sens want to buy on a guy like Eklund, who's also signed to a fantastic contract, so you have him under control for 3 more years. I just still sit there and go, I'm not used to a guy like William Eklund being worth the 9th overall pick in the draft, Huts.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest shock value here is like I love the idea of Eklund growing and being a fit as Ottawa starts to get better, post Brady Tkachuk move out as you look at the roster they're at. But the 9th overall pick is no joke. And that's where you start to worry about what that return is. And now you look at the Ottawa Senators, what else can they do as they start to try to better their team in this, trade from, what you got to haul back because it's gone. And when you look at some of the holes in this roster, I think there's some question marks on what you bring back because of the factor of how big he is and how powerful he is. Now you have a factor in Ottawa in the Atlantic division of what really are you? Are you a legitimate contender when everybody else is loading up? And we talked about that with St. Louis kind of waiting in the weeds. I don't think Ottawa's necessarily in that win now scenario with the way the Atlantic is. And I just don't know, pushing that 9th overall pick away is very scary in my opinion, Ty.
I would have preferred, and I think my word for fill in the blank will be underwhelming. I would have preferred Ottawa try to take 9th overall and maybe another future asset and go get like a really, really big piece to throw into the top 6. So I just think Eklund, almost in a similar way to, like the Byram deal, like you're giving up the 4th overall pick. I would have wanted you to aim a little bit higher than even a guy like Bowen Byram. I would have liked to see Ottawa aim a little bit higher here as well. The first trade of the day, we actually did this perfectly in reverse order, but the Calgary Flames made a splash, acquiring disgruntled defenseman Simon Nemec, along with forward Maxim Siplikov from the New Jersey Devils. In exchange, it's a prospect, it is a first-round pick, it is another first-round pick, and a second-round pick. Nemec is probably going to be good, but I use the word probably in there. He's not quite established. I get why a team like Calgary is willing to kind of make this splash because Nemec, the former 2nd overall pick, again, if it hits, this is going to be a beauty for the Calgary Flames. If it doesn't, I mean, I live in a market that sat through the Griffin Reinhart trade, and I don't want to make that direct comparable because I think Simon Nemec is better. But the point is, it's an unknown. So I'm not even going to declare a winner or a loser on this deal because they traded a bunch of pieces that are relatively unknown. But Huts, I'm still amazed that the Devils were able to flip Simon Nemec and get kind of this haul of assets.
Yeah, it's a good haul too for a guy that didn't want to be there. So like I feel like your leverage was gone, right? In the sense of, what he was able to do with this. And Sonny Meta being able to get this haul back is good because, a factor of like if a guy's out, it obviously loses the same power that he has. And for him, it's another interesting take. I think this is just the younger player we're dealing with in an insulated world where you get drafted second overall. You want to be in the NHL all the time, and it didn't go that way. And now going into drafting players and understanding the development, the value of time in the American Hockey League, you better be communicating with your players. You better have like a very good alignment on the growth and where he's going to be, because if it goes south, this is a situation you end up in. And again, Simon Nemec could turn into a star, and he may not. But the factor is the players now have kind of taken the flag back, and they own a lot of power, and they're using it. And this is another example of a guy that was disgruntled, didn't want to be there, and they found a way to get him out. And I think Jersey did a pretty good job of getting some picks back and hopefully making something out of nothing here.
Yeah, I see a comment in the chat. Don't like this trade from the Flames from Armonti, and I like Nemec, but I don't know. I look, and last year he had 26 points in 68 games. That's fine production, especially considering he got like basically no power play time. But then I look at Calgary. You have another young offensive right shot defenseman in Zane Parekh in your system. Why do you need two of them? Why did you feel the need to give up, again, this package of assets to get a guy who honestly could end up being redundant on the right side of your blue line if Parekh is the player you believe Parekh will be? So I don't know, man. This one, again, kind of puzzled me a little bit. We were going to talk Zach Werenski. I'll save that update for Ask DFO because I want to get to our guest and our boy Stephen Ellis, who is a presentation of the Ninja Crispy Pro Countertop Glass Air Fryer. Shark Ninja is elevating the air fryer experience once again. The Ninja Crispy Pro is a family-sized cooking system that comes with a 6-quart container, two full quart glassware containers, and a half-quart container as well. Storage lids, crisper plates, a modular base for any occasion. There's so much I can barely get it all out. It's a powerful air fryer, 1,800 watts, and it comes with customizable 6-in-1 functions like max crisp, air fry, bake, roast, recrisp, and even dehydrate. For more information on the Ninja Crispy Pro, visit the link in our description or go to sharkninja.ca. Stephen Ellis, our daily Faceoff draft analyst, who was hard at work yesterday redoing mock drafts because picks are flying all over the place. I'll just start with like a basic question of, are you surprised at almost how little some teams are valuing high draft picks for this class?
You know what? If anything, I'm surprised there has actually been trades because it seems like that's something that just doesn't typically happen at this point in the draft. That being said, I'm still looking at this and thinking teams don't really like this draft. I think you're happy if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs. You're probably thrilled if you're the San Jose Sharks at number 2. Beyond that, I don't think a ton of teams are looking at this draft in a high view anymore, and it's not too surprising. I don't think there's as many high-end talents as people were hoping, and that's just kind of the lay of the land here. So given every time I've been asked, like, do you expect trades in the top 10? I always default to no. It just doesn't happen. And then it happened a lot in the last 2 days, which was shocking.
Now, Stephen, is this a factor too when you think about the teams and these picks being moved, just like the teams not valuing this draft as much as they typically do, or just the factor of this is the new NHL with the lack of free agency and the cap going up and teams trying to be strategic here to better their teams more immediately?
It's interesting because, like, if you look like a team, and I know whatever is going on here in my video, I apologize. It's making no sense to me. When it comes to, like, when you see like a deal like Bowen Byram and seeing what happened there, like, I understand that was an overpayment. I feel like that's one where a team like that's making a move like that because they want to be good immediately. And Chase Reed's probably not going to push that the boundary right away. So I get that idea because a lot of these guys are quite far away, and that's fine. I think that's just something that's just going to happen in the draft. But I think it really depends on the team that's drafting. A team like Chicago, a team like San Jose, they should be more focused on the future and not focused on more on the present, I should say, and trying to get better and not looking at what their team might look like in 4 or 5 years because they've developed a lot of good guys already. It's time to move on. So I think it is something where it's the NHL readiness here. Like Gavin McKenna, Ivar Stenberg can make the NHL next year. I think you can make an argument for Chase Reed. Beyond that, though, I think any of these guys you can say, like, yeah, get immediate help. I'm okay with that.
Sorry, I was muted. What do you think Buffalo could do at 4 here? I know there is some, speculation that, hey, could they flip the pick? But like, let's say they go ahead and keep it here, Steven. Is there a player you really like at 4 for Buffalo?
I think at this point, Chase Reed, I think, that fits the need of, the guy they just traded away. And that's one that kind of makes a ton of sense. I think you can make a really good argument for Vigo Bjork and see if they want to bring in a centerman. I know that is a name that's been thrown around there. But I think when you look at Chase Reed, like, you're not going to find a better defenseman in this draft class. And I think they need a guy who can move the puck and be very effective at both ends of the ice. So Chase Reed makes a ton of sense. My backup would be Bjork. Beyond that, like, Carson Karls would be a good fit too. But if Reed falls to 4, I don't think the Buffalo Sabres would be wise to pass him up.
Yeah, I think that's the play there, Steven, with that pick. It's just interesting, right? I guess everything we thought that could happen might not happen. And that being said, San Jose making that trade yesterday with the Ottawa Senators, acquiring the 9th overall pick, and they still having number 2. Is Stenberg a lock at number 2 for the San Jose Sharks?
It feels like it at this point. Like, you look at that, and for me, I always wanted to do best player available. My original mock draft said, I understand the reason to get Reed, but Stenberg at number 2 makes a ton of sense. And I think that it opens up the opportunity to make some trades. And then you saw them trade William Eklund. And it's like, okay, well, here you go. Here's your replacement. Ivar Stenberg, younger guy, very skilled, can play top line. It will be a really good fit with someone like Macklin, Celebrini, and maybe Will Smith. So I really like that idea there. At that point, if you're picking Chase Reed, like, okay, you could do that, and then you can maybe use that second pick and pick another defenseman, and all of a sudden, that the weakness you had on the blue line is no longer a weakness whatsoever. But I feel like this is one where just pick Stenberg. He's the best player available at that point. That's the one that makes the most sense.
Well, and also I want to give you a ton of credit because you were grinding through the camera issue perfectly, but the audio is fine. So I told the people in the YouTube chat, just close your eyes. Imagine you're on a warm, sunny beach and you're listening to Stephen Ellis's work here. But the next one I wanted to throw at you, sticking with San Jose, is just the fact that they have 9th overall now as well, right? So, like, if they wanted to go forward D-man, like, that opportunity is going to be there for him to grab 2 good pieces.
Okay, it's actually hilarious seeing myself talking.
I know.
A little behind. But yeah, like, that's someone where, the pick at 9, like, you're going to, like, I tweeted, like, there's a very good chance they're going to pick a D, and they lose out on the opportunity to really choose who you want at that point. Like, you go from having the option to pick the best defenseman in the draft to you might get the guy who's left. But that's the thing you look at here. The Rangers could make an argument for a bunch of different players. They could go out and, let's just say, Caleb Mahaltra falls to 5th. That would be an option. Could they pick a Vigo Bjork? A lot of teams around that top 5 area like him. Then that all of a sudden potentially moves down Carson Karls and moves down Keaton Verhoff and Albert Smits and Daxon Rudolph. So I'm very confident they will be able to get one of those guys. And if it's not one of them, Malte Gustafsson. That's a guy that a lot of scouts think could be the 2nd or 3rd best defenseman in this draft. I don't necessarily agree, but he's a really big defenseman who has shown he can get really good results in the offensive zone recently. And I think defensively, he's one of the most stout guys they have. So I think San Jose should be looking at this and saying, just pick the best player available. That's probably going to be a forward at number 2, and use that number 9 pick to go out there and show your defense. And you're going to be very happy. I think, you're probably not getting a number 1 defenseman at number 9, but you're going to probably get a number 2 or number 3, and that might be totally okay too. Not every team needs a true number 1 defenseman.
Stephen, we broke down a trade from earlier with Jordan Kyrou and for McMichael, and now I'm going to talk St. Louis Blues. It's 11, 15, 16, and 29. Those are their 4 first-round picks. What can we expect from the St. Louis Blues when it comes to the first round, what they take or what they trade away?
That's the thing. I think it makes sense for them to make a couple trades. I wonder if they move up into the top 10. Mike Greer a few minutes ago said that he got a very interesting offer for number 2. Could it involve the Blues throwing a bunch of draft picks at this and saying, like, we want to move into 2nd place? And that would honestly make a ton of sense. It'd be a really good fit for them. Not sure how that would logistically work, but let's just say, let's have fun. Let's say they actually use all their picks here. And let's say they go with a guy, they probably can get a defenseman. They could probably get a Malte Gustafsson at number 11. Then you go to 15. I got Oscar Hemming, a player who didn't have a great year. He didn't even play the first half of the season. But then he went and played the second half, was really good in college, and I think he'd be impressive. You can get Alexander Coman and get a really good centerman, a very reliable guy who ceiling as a 2nd line center, but really strong floor as a number 3. So I really like that. And then you're looking at that last pick, and Maybe you get Brooks Rogowski, a 6'7" center who can skate. Maybe you go all out on skill and get JP Hurlburt, one of the best players in the WHL. Maybe you pick Xavier Villeneuve, who is the newest version of Lane Hudson. Like, there's actually a lot of really good options here. So I like the idea of them having all 4 picks and really accelerating this rebuild. But having 4 picks in the first round makes me think they're going to make a trade.
Let me just quickly pick your brain. Landon Dupont, Jeff Merrick with some breaking news earlier this morning that it sounds like Michigan is the lucky program that'll be landing Landon. What do you make of the fit there, Landon Dupont to Michigan? And tell hockey fans a bit about the player.
Well, Landon Dupont is definitely one of the most skilled defensemen you're going to find. Probably would be, there'd be a very good chance he could go first overall if he was in this year's draft. Like, that's the thing. He's a very talented player. He got exceptional status to the WHL, a huge reason why Everett won the WHL championship and ended up going to the Memorial Cup. As a guy who lives in the Ontario area, seeing a player that's a drivable distance for me, thumbs up. Can't complain about that. But I actually think that's a good fit because we know Michigan's going to be a top contender. They're getting guys like Michael Hage back. It's a team that should be one of the top teams going for the national title, and he'll have the opportunity to be the number 1D, the number 1 power play quarterback. I think that's a really good fit because he could have gone to a lot of different schools, Denver, Michigan State, but he would have had to fight for his ice time with some other quality defensemen. Michigan, I feel like he's going to be a very key part. So I think it's a great fit.
All right, I'm going to mishmash 2 segments together here to give you one more question. General Soreness was in the YouTube chat. He really wants me to ask you about Albert Smits. I'm looking over at our friends on Bet365, so bear with me for a second here, Steven. For our friends at Bet365, the worst thing about hockey season is that at some point every year it ends. There's a lot of time between now and the first puck drop of which feels like an eternity for those of us used to nightly games. The good news is Bet365 still has plenty of other games. At the Bet365 casino, you can choose between hundreds of slots, live tables, and your favorite games, or maybe your second favorite game. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. They have an over-under for Albert Smith's draft position, and the line is set at 7.5. Do you think Smiths goes earlier or later than pick 7.5?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think, you could look at a team like, Seattle. I think that's the real one here. I have him going 8th. To me, it's a toss-up between Seattle and Winnipeg. It's like, do they like Keaton Bearhoff more, or do they like Albert Smiths? I don't know if he's going to go higher. I don't think he goes top 5. So 7 and 8, definitely the 2 picks I'd be watching. I would like to point out Seattle has never drafted a defenseman in the first round of the draft. And I feel like that's something where things get interesting. But Smiths, I feel more confident saying he's going to go 8th overall. That's my guess. So that's my pick.
Steven, exceptional stuff. Thank you so much for popping on. And we will, we look forward to your coverage on draft day because it could be a banger. Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys.
Steven Ellis, an absolute trooper for grinding through those internet issues. They're on our end, by the way. They're not on his, but he grinded through it like a trooper for us. Hashtag AskDFO time. Huts, let's do this one because we didn't get to it earlier. Elliot Friedman reporting yesterday, and I know I talked a little bit about Werenski on yesterday's show, but Friedman reporting yesterday that the Blue Jackets and Werenski are going to meet after the draft this weekend and discuss his future with the club. So let me throw you this. There is a blank % chance that Werenski gets traded this summer.
Well, I don't think it's this summer. Like, I think he might be a guy that goes into this season and he plays, and if it doesn't go as planned, then there's the move out. Because I think there's a lot to go off of there with Rick Bowness coming back and the way the season ended. I do believe he stays and tries to see it through, but it's going to be tempting, right? As you start to see guys move, you start to see teams going to that win now mentality with players. So it will be interesting. I don't think the draft is really going to change it. I think the season is going to be much more important for Zach Werenski, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to go low too. I'm going to say it's like 12%. I was in between saying 10 and 15, so I'll say 12% chance. I really do think Columbus will run this out one more year. And honestly, Bowen Byram got traded with 1 year remaining on his deal and got the 4th overall pick and more for return. So if you look at that in your Columbus, you can almost point to that Byram deal and be like, you know what? If we wait till next year, we're probably still getting a haul for him at next year's draft. Let's not, show our fan base that we're punting on next season or starting a rebuild. Give it one more kick at the can and then see if you can, see what next summer holds. Maybe you sneak into the playoffs. Maybe you build up some goodwill. maybe you can make a big trade for another player, and that shows Werenski that, you know what, I'm going to stick around and I'm going to keep playing here. So I think it'd be a mistake for the Blue Jackets to punt this early on Werenski. Next up, I got from Pierre LeBrun a report yesterday. I shouldn't even say just Pierre LeBrun. It's just whose Twitter is up on my screen right now. But the NHL, Gary Bettman making some pretty interesting comments in regards to expansion. Huts Bettman says they've agreed to a $3.5 billion total investment fee and closing arena build if they go ahead with expansion to either Houston or Austin. The process, according to Bettman, could take up to 6 months. From that point, doing some reading, it sounds like 1 year to get the land all figured out and then 2 to 3 years to build. Like, we're probably talking about 2030 at the earliest here. But what do you make of the idea that the NHL could be expanding and putting a second team in Texas?
Not surprising. You know, I played a lot in the Houston Aeros. Like, they had a good fan base. And then you look at Austin, the success of the AHL team, the Texas Stars, and that market is buzzing population-wise. I think there's growth there. And then again, you with the success you've seen in Dallas, and Dallas is one of the better places to play in the NHL. Like, you go to Dallas as a road team, it is an exciting building to be in. They've had consistently good teams. It's not surprising. It just will be interesting, the structure, right? As we start to add more teams, if it grows, if it's one, do they add two? And those are the question marks you start to think of as the NHL grows. But one thing we will tell you again, it's in a really, really good place.
Yeah, Jay Ath with a good point just to close out one of the conversations we had earlier. I think this was a good comment. When St. Louis has to re-sign McMichael to an $8 million AAV contract, the deal will start to lean in Washington's favor. Kyrou's going to flourish in Carb's system. Mikey will excel if he plays with Robert Thomas. I do think that's a good point as well, as we talk about, kind of how we value players. Is a piece like Jordan Kyrou, who has 6 years of term left on his deal at $8.1 million. Like, we're going to get to a summer here where Alex Tuch's going to be double digits, and pretty much every top of the market free agent is going to be getting double digits moving forward. Getting some cost certainty in Jordan Kyrou, I think, is a big, big plus for Washington, which on the flip side makes the Bowen Byram deal make even less sense, Huts, because that's a guy who he's a UFA next summer. You're going to have to give Bowen Byram a $10 million plus AAV, and that's bonkers.
Yeah, it is crazy too. Again, that is the value, I think, coming back to Washington. He could thrive in that situation, but at 8.1 locked up into 2031, he becomes a UFA. There is value with Kyrou. I think it's that demeanor of like Kyrou that I think just wore thin. Like, talking to a few people in St. Louis, where I think at times it was just the effort and that give a shit meter needed to be a little bit higher. But going to play for Spencer Carberry has values, right? He has a really good way of getting through to players. We've seen that firsthand. So this is a deal that we're going to watch as it plays out. But again, for St. Louis, stockpiling some picks and getting some players is never a bad idea with where their team is at. The one to watch now is Parayko. Like, what happens with Parayko? Everybody else has been traded. I know he nixed that trade to Buffalo. He's a guy to keep an eye on as we go into summer here.
I mean, he was going, what was the deal at the deadline? It was like Radim Merchka and a first for Colton Parayko. If you're St. Louis and you look at that Byram deal, Byram's younger, Byram has upside. I get that. But Parayko, steady, big, like he has those intangibles that we know playoff teams love, and he comes with the cost certainty as well, like what Washington got with Jordan Kyrou. So if you're St. Louis, I think whoever's calling you on Parayko, that cost him, it might have gone the last 3-4 months now.
Yeah, it has too. And again, I also think, like, if you're a team, I know Bo Byram and you talk about offensive defensemen and you need those pieces, but like, we just watched the template of the Carolina Hurricanes that have that shutdown style D-man, whether it's Slavin or Chatfield or, the way that they play in the defensive zone, I think adds some value. And Parayko still has some tread on his tire where you add him to a piece. He might be the guy that pushes you over the top come a deep playoff run, Ty.
All right, wrapping up the show. We already did our daily bets, so let's get to garbage time. And did you all really think we were going to ignore the Mike Babcock press conference from yesterday? We had a couple of absolute bangers from Mike Babcock. He is the same old guy. I went into this being like, hey, maybe he'll be remorseful and show us that he's a changed person and all this stuff. He's not, and I think nothing showed that more than this quote right here. We're all committed, all in on winning. And obviously in that time period, we'd gone through enough things and talked about enough things that they felt comfortable with the process, or I wouldn't be here, said Babcock. He continued on, I was very clear to them, unless you're 100% in on Mike Babcock, I have no interest in being the coach. Nothing says ego and all of that like referring to yourself in the third person.
Yeah, honestly, that is something else. And you know, as I'm watching the press conference and you're trying to decipher, you know, where he's at and the resentment, and then the other one for me that stood out was asked about what went on with Columbus, and he said he didn't bench anybody, he didn't scratch anyone, didn't do anything, and then he just said that his wife called and it was time to get out of there. Just like totally avoided the question. There was just no remorse in anything that happened. So that being said, I get on paper, you sit with your coach and you think about his pedigree and maybe this is what you want. But time will tell during a regular season. When he's telling Leon Draisaitl what he really thinks about an off shift, how's Leon going to react to that? And how's that going to go over in the room? So time will tell, and I hope it works out, but they're really rolling the dice here in Edmonton, Ty.
Yeah. And honestly, Babcock even talked about that when the Oilers stars told him that they want to be coached hard and all that. He said something to the effect of, you can say that in June, but you better not change your tune come training camp, because Babcock, if we learned anything from yesterday, he ain't changing his ways. So an interesting one in Edmonton. That organization always keeps you on your toes. I want to quickly plug our free agency show, which is 7 days away. Me, Hutz, Jeff Merrick, all in person, all in studio in Toronto. Colby Cohen, Lazarus, Dave Pagnotta. I mean, the list goes on. Matt Larkin's going to be there too. We got the whole DFO crew showing out for a free agency show on July 1, which will probably feature more big trades than big signings, although Alex Tuch continues to be a name to watch. I also wanted to give some love to Jeff Merrick and his draft show coming up later on this week with Pierre Maguire riding shotgun. They did it last year. It was wildly entertaining, and this year it should be no different. I mean, yesterday was wild. If it's any sign of what's to come, you're not going to want to miss the draft show or the free agency show or any of our shows. We still got 2 more to go this week, and I'm assuming we'll get some more big trades. That is a wrap on a Wednesday edition of Daily Faceoff Live. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you tomorrow. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohen on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.